Okay, so we're on week 4, correct? Any questions about anything so far? Anything we've done? Anything we did? Anything we covered? All right. So, what I'm going to tell you this week is a little something about lists. We already encountered lists, but we'll do it more in detail. All right. So, lists. What is a list? Like a list is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? This is an example of a list. Right? So what is a list? Something in square brackets and with a bunch of things in it separated by commas. Okay? So there's number lists. There's you can have word lists. 2, 3, right? That's a word list. And you can have, mixed lists. Mixed list is equal to square brackets. I'm just going to get this, throw it in there. I'm going to get this, throw it in here, right? So unlike other programming languages, if you have done any other programming languages, other programming languages have these things called arrays. And arrays are just like lists, except they're limited to only one data type, right? So in other languages, you would have a list of only integers, and then you would have a list of only strings or of only characters, that kind of thing, right? So if it's an integer list, you can't put floats in it, that kind of things. Python, you can do whatever you want, right? In fact, this here, right, I'm going to make another one, list of lists is equal to A list, and then B list, and then I can even do mixed list, right? So you can put lists inside of lists, no problem. Okay, but let's not get too carried away. So the main things for now that I want you to remember, the terminology is these here are elements, right? So element 1 is equal to B list 0. Okay, element 2 is equal to B list 1. Element 3 is equal to B list 2. Okay, so each of these elements, so this is an element, element. These are the different elements, right? So this is element, right? So these are the elements or items. Some languages call them one thing, some languages call it something else. Okay, so the elements are identified using the indexes, right? So the index is another important thing you need to know. So this is the index 0, index 1, index 2. So the first element has index 0, second element has an index 1, third element has an index 2, right? And this thing also has indexes, right? So index 0, 1, 2, 3, right? So the index always starts at 0, and it always goes to 1 less than however many things you have in the list, right? So if you have 4 things in the list, the last index is going to be 3, 4 minus 1. Okay? Make sense? Any questions? All right. So these are the basics. So you need to know what an index is. You need to know what an element is. Okay? So I'm going to go in there and I'm going to show you print element 1 of B list is B list 0. Right? And I'm going to copy this. So element, this was 1, this is 2, and this is 3, all right, 1, so you can see them. Okay, if I run this, all right, It shows you 1, 2, 3, which is the actual elements. All right. Possible problems with lists are the error of list index out of range, right? List index out of range error, right? So if I go in there and I do this element 4 of B list is B3, right? There isn't a 3. It only goes 0, 1, 2. There isn't a fourth element. So if I'm trying to show you the fourth element of B list, you're going to run into this error, the list index out of range. Okay, so be very familiar with that and understand why you're getting that error, because you're giving it an index that doesn't exist. Okay, so that's the list index out of range. Okay, so I'm going to comment this out, right? That's the index error. Okay. All right, so what else? Let me put this out of the way. I'm going to put it there. Okay, so length of a list, right? I can check how many things are in the list. I'm going to get this one out of the way too. Index out of range was this here. Okay, so you saw the list index out of range. Now the next thing I'm going to do is check or find out how many elements are in a list using the len function. All right, so you already know what a function is. The len function is part of the Python language, and it lets you find out how many things are in the list, right? So I want to see print there are, and I'm going to do len b list elements in b list. All right, I can run it, and it shows you there are 3 elements in b list, which is exactly how many elements we have, right? A list with 3 elements. Okay. So what else? Oh, showing the whole list, right? So this is how many things are in the list, and if you want to show the whole list, show the entire list, then I can just say print b list is, and I'll show you just b list just like that. All right, so that shows you the whole list with the square brackets and just like a regular list. If you don't want to see the square brackets, you can do it another way. You can just, I'm going to copy this. I'm going to put a little asterisk in front of it so you know the difference. So if I put an asterisk, it's going to look like this. Right? So if you want to get rid of the square brackets and the commas and all the other fancy stuff, and you just look at the elements themselves, you just put a little asterisk in there. Okay? So this here shows as this, and this other one, this one here shows as this, right? I like the first one better because it tells me it's a list. I know it's a list. Any questions about anything so far? Pretty basic? All right. Now let's see what else I want to tell you. So intro to lists. All right, so I showed you that, the elements, types of lists, right? The different kinds of lists. You can have lists of lists, lists of integers, mixed lists. Okay, so now the next thing is, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make an empty list, right? Because you're going to have to do some of these assignments. They're going to ask you to just make a list of things, and you don't know how many things are in the list, so you're going to start with an empty list and just keep adding to the list. Okay? So let's say I want the user to enter, I don't know, 4 numbers into a list. Okay? So I'll do something like this. I'll say empty list, right? I'll call it CList. CList is equal to this, right? So this right here makes an empty list. Okay, and if I go in there and I do print CList, you should see it as just square brackets, nothing in it, which is what it is. Okay, now the next thing is, let's say I want to have the user, right? I'm going to use a loop for I in range from 0 to 4, because I know it's going to happen 4 times. I'm going to do int input, please enter a number, and I'm going to make a variable, let's say num, which is equal to whatever they enter, and then I'm going to say CList.append num. Okay, so append adds at the end of the list. Okay, and I can show you the list. Print CList equals CList. All right, so you can see how it expands as I'm adding things to it. So I run it. All right, enter a number, 5, 6, 7, 8. Right, so you can see it adds every number that I entered, the append adds it to the end of the list. Okay, so making an empty list, adding things to a list, basic things. Any questions? All right. Let's see what else I want to tell you. All right, so suppose you have a list with a bunch of things. You don't know how many things are in the list, right? You can figure out how many things are using the length of the list. And what we're going to do is we're going to use that to make a loop that goes through the list, right? So use the len to create a loop that iterates through the elements of the list. So I just go and I'm going to grab this thing here, right? Before I knew that it's going to be 4 times, this time let's say I don't know how many things are in the list. I'm going to go and grab one of these, I don't know, mixed list, right? I'm going to go with the mixed list. I don't know how many things are in the mixed list. len of mixed list. I don't want to go and count how many things are in it. And I'm going to show, right? Show every element of the list. Okay, so I'm going to go and do print mixed list square brackets. Let's just do I in there. Close the square brackets. Equals. And then here I'm going to do mixed list I. Okay, so that's that. And let's have a look at what it shows me. Run it again. And all right, so that's what this shows me, right? So I is just the index. So this thing changes the values of I from I is equal to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, because there's 7 things on the list, right? I can show you. Print, there are len mixed list elements in the list. All right. Oops. One more time. Too fast. All right. So there's 7 elements of on the list. The last one is 6, right? So Python loops are designed in such a way that you don't get the index out of range, right? So it's meant to stop at 1 before, conveniently, actually. Any questions? Still good? Okay. Let's have a look at what else I want to tell you. All right, list length, show, change elements. Okay, so I haven't showed you how to change elements. So these are the original elements, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. So what I want to do is, next thing I want to do is want to make every element equal to 0. right? And by the way, let me just go back up here and just show you. So the first element was this, right? B list 0, right? So if I go in there and I show you print the entire B list is equal to B list, okay? And I run it, right? The entire B list, where did that show up? The entire B list is this, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to change the elements, okay? I'm going to go in there and change the elements of the list. So I'm going to say B list 0 is equal to, I don't know, 4, right? B list 1 is equal to 5, just the number. B list 2 is equal to, I don't know, 6. Okay? So then if I go and I show you the whole list, I'm going to copy this. Alright, the entire B list. This is after the change. After changing the elements, the entire B list is, and you should see it, it's this, right? So I was able to change the original list, which is this, into this, using the index numbers for each of the elements. And that's it. Any questions? All right. Yes?
You can put them together?
What do you mean?
Oh, no.
What do you mean together?
Or you need there's a 1, 0, 1, 2.
Yeah, you have to do it separate.
Separate.
You have to do it, yeah, individually.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's say I had my mixed list, which is towards the bottom, right? And that thing is going to, or you already saw it, that it showed this, right? So let's say I want my list, I'll make another loop, right? Separate loop. Okay, I'm going to get this, paste it in there, right? I still is the same value, but now instead of showing these, I'm going to go in there and take this out, and I'm going to make this equal to 0. Just like that, right? So I'm going to use my I, which is the counter that goes through, every index of the array or list, and then makes them all equal to 0. So if I do print mixed list equals mixed list, and you're going to see it. All right? So this was it initially, and this was it after. Okay? So changing a list, showing a list, iterating through a list with a loop, using the length of the list, making an empty list, adding to a list. These are the things that you will need to understand, and also what is an index, what is an element, what's an item, right? Item, element, same thing. These are the things that you need to have a solid understanding of in order for you to be able to write Python programs. Okay, because everything you've learned up to this point is great, but we need to be able to plug that information into lists and use lists the right way. Okay, so list length, show change elements. I showed you this, right? There's a bunch of examples in there. Resolution is messed up, so it'll look better if you got a bigger screen. All right, so I showed you how to add to a list. Now searching through a list, right? So you should be able to search through a list. Let's say I have search through a list, right? So let's say I have numList is equal to, and why don't I fill this thing up with numbers? Yeah, I'll throw in some random numbers in there. Search through a list. I'm going to make 10 things. For I in range from 0 to 10, steps of 1, from random import randint, so I can make random numbers, and I'm going to throw in some random numbers, search through a list of random numbers between, I don't know, let's go from 1 to 3 and find out how many 2's are in the list. Okay? So I'm going to go in there, I'm going to say, all right, num, let's just say this is num is equal to, let's call it random num. Random num is equal to randint between 1 and 3, right? That's a random number. And then I'm going to add that to the num list dot append random num. Okay, so I'm going to make that list, and I'm going to show you the list. Print num list equals num list, and then, well, actually, let's say this is make a list of random numbers between 1 to 3, and now the next piece is here, and find out how many 2's are in the list, right? So I'm going to fill this list with numbers, show you the list, right? I mean, add the numbers to the list, show you the list, then I'm going to just recycle my loop, but let's just say I'm going to use the length this time for I in range from 0 to the length of my num list, right? By the way, I mean, I can change this to a random number too, right? Make a list of random length x and fill the list with numbers between 1 to 3, right? So let's say x is some random number, right? X is equal to rand int. Let's say I want a list between 10 to 20 things, right? Want a list with a random length between 10 to 20. Okay, I'm just going to flip this to x, right? So now I don't know how many things are in the list, which is why I'm going to use the length of the list later on, because I don't know how many things are in it. Okay, and I am going to look for 2's, right? Find out how many 2's are in the list, right? So I'm going to say, make some variable, count 2's, right? Make it equal to 0. And then, if any of my elements, right, are equal to the number 2, then I'm going to count it, right? Also known as count is equal to this plus 1. Whether you write it one way or another, same thing. Okay? So this is how you're going to count the 2's. Okay? So I go in there, and I'm going to show you print there are count 2's in the list. Okay? Run it. Right. I made a list with random length, right? How many things are in, what's the length of the thing? I don't know, between 10 to 20. And there's 6 2's in it, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. Okay? All right. You can do other things like, let's say, want to find out how many numbers are even. All right, so I'm going to make another counter. Count even is equal to 0. And if any of my elements are divisible by 2, then I'm going to count my even. All right, plus, well, let's do it the long way, is equal to this plus 1. Right, same as the above syntax pretty much. And I'll show you that there are. And now it's even numbers in the list. All right, so that's counting even, counting odd. Any questions? Make sense? Okay, so searching through a list, counting things on the in the list, those kind of things are the things that you should be able to do. Right? And there's built-in functions in Python that will let you count things and stuff like that. You don't get to use them. Okay? You got to write it yourself. Okay? So, how about summing things in the list, right? There's a convenient Python function which lets you sum things in the list, which, since it's so convenient, you don't get to use it, right? So let's say I want to figure out print the sum of the elements in the list is, and you can do sum num list, right? And my gripe with this is that, do you know how the sum function works? Well, my guess is no, because you didn't write it, somebody else wrote it. So unless you write the codes, I'm not going to take this, right? So it's too easy. You don't get to use this. So what I'm going to do is, don't do this, right? I'm going to do just another loop, right? I'm going to say sum is equal to 0 for I in range from 0 to the length of my num lists. Steps of 1, sum is equal to sum plus every element of the list. That's it, right? So if you write this, you get full credit. If you do the Python built-in function, you get a 0. All right, so make sure you don't do that. Okay, any questions? Still good? Okay, so summing, and then you know how to do the average and all that good stuff, right? Let's do an average. Print the average of the elements of all the numbers in the list is, and you do sum divided by what? Length of the thing. len of num list. Okay? And I'm getting tired of entering numbers, but oops, one more time too fast. 1, 2, 3, 4. Alright, so there you go. Sum and average. Basic stuff. What else do I want to tell you? So adding to a list, arithmetic, smallest, largest. These don't even have to do with lists. Alright, so let me tell you a little bit about strings. Right? So strings are lists. Immutable lists. Okay? So I'm going to go in there. Let me disable that piece of code here that keeps asking me to enter things. So this one here, I'm going to turn this off. So I don't want to enter any more numbers into this program ever. Okay, so, alright. Now let's have a look at strings. Strings are immutable lists. And I'll show you what that means in a second. So let's say I have a sentence, and the sentence is, I don't know, let's call it name. Name is equal to Alex, right? And I can treat this thing just like a list, right? So I can show you print the first letter in name is name 0, right? Just like a list. So we can run this, and you're gonna see it eventually. All right, first letter in Alex is A. Okay, great. All right, so it works like a list that you can also do things like for I in range from 0 to the length of name, and I'm going to go in there, I'm going to say, all right, print Alex, square brackets, no, name, square brackets, I, equals, and then name, I, just like I did with the list. So if I run this thing, all right, it shows you every element of the string. So every character of the string has its own index, right? Index, we have 0, 1, 2, 3, right? Just like that. Okay? And you're going to run into the same issues if you go in there and you try to do, let's do this, actually. Let's say I want to show the last element of a string. how would I do that if I don't know how many things are in the string? Right? It could be like 5,023 or something. I don't know. Right? I'm looking for the last one. So help me out. The last character of name is, and how do I do it using the length? No idea? LEN, alien of name, right? But what's the LEN of name? We have, right, if I do print, there are LEN name characters in the string, right? If I do this, what is it going to do?
It's going to tell you how many things are in the thing.
Right? So it shows me there are 4 characters in the list, and then I'm getting this index, string index out of range, which is line 83, which is this right here, right? Line 83. So what's wrong?
Just do minus one.
It's 0, so the last number needs to be -1.
-1, right? So that's a very common error. You're trying to show the last thing and using the length, but remember the length. If the length is 4, right? LEN of name is 4, and you're plugging in the number 4 in here. Okay, that's no good. There's no 4, so you have to do 4 minus 1. Okay, that's what we're doing. Okay, so let's see if this works. Eventually, one day. All right, last character is X. Okay, good. And you can do the same stuff in these other lists that we did, right? So I showed you all these, right? I'm going to show you right here. Print the last element of B list is B list. Whoops, quotes. B list. LEN of B list -1. Okay? Same thing. All right, so up to this point, you can see that strings are pretty much like a list, right? With just about everything we've done, or everything we've done so far. It's a list, right? All right. Well, let's say I have in here. I'm going to show you how strings are similar to lists, right? But strings are immutable lists, right? And what I mean by immutable, you could have a list like, I don't know, nums is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And if I want to, I already showed you up here somewhere. Where did I do it? I don't remember. Right here, right? Changing every element of a list, right? Changing elements of a list, right? I did it here one time. I also did it here, right? Manually, one by one. Okay, so just to remind you that I could do this, I'm going to show you print nums equals nums, and then I'm going to say nums. And then again, just to refresh your memory, index is 0, 1, 2, 3, right? I'm going to go and change the index. Let's say I'm going to change the last one. Well, I'll go with the first one. First one is equal to 10 now. Okay, and I can show you that this is no problem because we already did it a bunch of times and it worked. But let's do it one more time. So there you go, I changed it, no problem, right? So can change the individual elements of the list. Bless you. All right, but I can't do this to a string, and that's what it means that it's immutable, right? Cannot change individual elements, characters, items, whatever you want to call them, of a string, okay? Which is why it's immutable. So if I wanted to, I could do this. I can go in there, and my name is Alex, right? If you don't know. So we're going to go in there. I'm going to do name is equal to Alex, right? That's okay, right? I'm not changing the individual elements. So I'm assigning a whole new string to the variable name, which is okay. Okay? So I can do this, and I can show you name equals name. Alright? And you're going to see that it changed it, obviously. Alright? There it is. Changed it. Okay. But now let's say I want to go in there and I'm going to make this, I want to turn it into lowercase a again. Okay, so want to change the first letter to A. Okay, so I'm going to go in there, I'm going to say, alright, well, name, just like we've been doing with the lists, right? I'm going to say name 0. And by the way, I can show you name 0, right? So print, accessing it is fine, right? So name 0 is equal to name name 0. Okay, so I can run this, and you're going to see that, you know, it shows you the uppercase A. There it is, right? So I can show it, no problem. Okay, so showing the element is okay, but now I'm going to try to change it. I'm going to say, all right, name 0 is equal to lowercase a. Okay, and that's where it's going to throw a fit. And the error is this: str object does not support item assignment. That is the meaning of an immutable list. Okay, all right, that's the error. So you can't do this. Can't do this to a string. All right, we cannot change the individual elements of a string. Okay, so no good. If you do this, you get the type error: string object does not support item assignment. So get ready to encounter that error, because you will encounter that error most likely. You're going to work with strings. Plenty. Python is really good with strings, really good for data mining purposes because of that. So since it's so good with strings, how can I change the string, right? Easy, just turn the string into a list, and then change the list, and then change the list back into a string. All right, so I go in there and I say, all right, first change the string into a list. So this is a little, right? So this is to change an element of a string. All right, first change the string into a list. So I'm going to say name is equal to list name. Right? Just turn yourself into a list. Yeah, there it is. And I can show you print name. Let me show it to you before. Well, actually, there's name is here, so you can see it here. You're going to see now what it looks like. Name as a list looks like this. Eventually. All right, so there you go. Now we turn this, which was a string, into a list. Okay, and you already know that I can go in there and I can do whatever I want to a list. All right, so I'm going to go in there. I'm going to say, all right, name 0, all right, is equal to lowercase a. All right, so now it's changed the element of the list. Okay, and I can show it to you again. All right, so you can see that it worked so far. And there it is, right? So I changed it to lowercase a. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the string back into a list, or the list back into a string. So I'll turn the list back into a string, and I just do name equals quote quote dot join name, just like that. Okay, and I'm going to copy this, put it here, name as a string, and you're going to see it changing back into a string. There it is. Okay, so that's the meaning of an immutable, immutable, and why you're getting these, this error object does not support item assignments. All right, there's other things in the language other than lists and strings. There's also tuples. Tuple is just like a list, but just like a string. Okay, it's an immutable list. All right, so tuples are basically just like a list, but they use curly brackets. All right, so there's sometimes you might want to read something from a file, put it into a list, and you don't want to change that list. Well, tuple will be something that you want to use. But if you want to change the list, individual elements of it, then you want to use lists. Okay, so we're not going to bother with tuples really, because most of the things I'm going to have you do is just you're going to have to change things and look around and that kind of things. Okay, so now you know strings. Now you know how they're similar to lists, and that they have indexes. You can measure their length. You can show the individual characters of a string, but you cannot change the individual characters of a string, right? If I try to do this kind of stuff, that's no good. If I try to assign a whole new string to my original string, that's okay, no problem. Okay, but you cannot change the individual characters. All right. Any questions? We're good? Okay. So let's have a look at what do you have to do for today? So first, couple of assignments here, 22, 23, right? This doesn't even have to do with lists, but what you have to do is you're going to have to write some loops in there, right? So what you have to do is, this is an arithmetic training program or whatever you want to call it. Somebody's going to try to practice addition, subtraction, or multiplication. We're not going to do division because it's just a little more complicated, so let's not do it. So the program will have a loop for each of the desired operations that lets the user repeat the practice as many times as desired. Well, let's do it. Let me change a little bit. Program will have a loop that lets the user repeat the practice as many times as desired, right? Slight change. Okay, we're going to generate two random numbers between 0 and 9, and whoever it is going to try to add, subtract, or multiply these numbers. If the user does not answer if the user answers the question correctly, tell them good job, ask them if they want to repeat again. If the user answers the question incorrectly, you have to go in there and generate the same exact question again. So let's say I'm going to go in there, I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to make a 2 plus 2. Let's say they guessed it wrong the first time, or let's do 5, right? So initially you're giving them a question, what is 2 plus 2 equal to? They get it wrong. Immediately you repeat the same question with the same exact numbers. They get it wrong again. You repeat it again until they get it right. They finally get it right. And then as soon as they do that, and that's why I'm changing this a little bit, right? Then you're going to ask them, okay, would you like to add, subtract, or multiply? Let's say they enter 1 again. And then you make two new random numbers. Make sense? So you repeat the same question. If they get it wrong, when they get it right, tell them, do you want to repeat the game? If they say yes, generate two new random numbers. Any questions on this? Do you want hints on this? Are you good? Yes, hints? Okay. So this is hint for 22. Okay, so this is P22 hint, right? So of course you have to use the random, import random, randint, all that stuff. In case you forgot, is just do from random import randint to make the random numbers. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to ask the user, we're going to make two random numbers. Let's say num1 is equal to randint between, what did I say, 0 to 9. Okay, that's the first one. And notice how I'm going to write this. It's like I'm not going to go and try to imagine really huge, complicated problem and then try to solve the whole thing at once. Nope. I'm going to narrow it down to like the simple parts of the problem. Right? You're not going to write the program for the car to drive itself all at once. You're going to narrow it down. Okay, what is the front left sensor supposed to do? Well, it's supposed to measure the distance. Okay, then what? So we're breaking it down into the smallest possible parts that we can solve. We're going to solve the individual parts and start putting things together into the bigger picture. So first, I'm just going to make two random numbers, right? And I'm just going to go with addition, right? Addition. Okay, so I'm going to just do something like print, or I'm going to do answer is equal to int input, and I'm going to say what is, and I have to show this number, and plus the other number, maybe quote is equal to, equal to, right? There. Is this going to work? What's that? Yeah, I meant number 2. But even if I change this to number 2, is this going to work? No. Why? Correct. So if I run it, let's just run it so we can see what the error message that it gives me. Bam. Okay. Input expected at most 1 arguments got 5. Right? So it expects one thing, and it thinks that I'm giving it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 separate things. Easy. I can just convert the whole thing into one big string using concatenation, right? Adding separate strings together into one big string is the easiest way to fix this. And by the way, if I forget to do this, watch, let me generate the other error. So if I don't do the str business, I run it. Whoops. I forgot an extra plus in there. That's not the error I'm looking for. One more time. And this is going to be the other error. Oops. Can't convert int object to string implicitly. Okay, so we got rid of the previous error message, which was input expected at most 1 argument's got 5, but now it's getting a hiccup on you can't add a string and integer implicitly. Okay, well let's be explicit. I'm going to go in there, I'm going to tell it, alright, it's a string. Add 2 strings together, right? It knows how to do that. I run it. Right, and notice I'm just running my program. I write up like a line of code that doesn't work, so what? Run it again, fix, run it again, fix. Okay, now this piece works. Maybe I can go and add a little space or whatever. What is 5 plus 8 equal to? I don't know. 7. No idea. All right? Okay, so now the next piece is, all right, I got it wrong. What do I need to do? Well, I got to repeat the question if the answer is wrong. Repeat the question if the answer is wrong. So I go in there and I say, if answer is not equal to num1 plus num2, right? I'm going to go in there and I'm going to repeat this. All right, check again. All right, what is 6 plus 5 equal to? I don't know, 7. What is it equal to? I don't know, 9. Wait, it didn't repeat as many times as I wanted to. What do I need to do? Make a loop, right? So the if happens one time, I'm not going to make an if, I'm going to use a while loop, right? Run again. And this is the incremental development, you know, just don't worry if it doesn't work, just fix it, rerun it, fix it, rerun it. All right, 2 plus 0 is equal to what? I don't know. Same question, I don't know. Same question, I don't know. All right, let me get it right. And it stops. Okay, so now what's the next thing I want to do? I want to ask them, do you want to repeat this again? Let me add a little space in there because this bothers me. All right, so I'm going to go in there, and now I have to ask the user, repeat, all right? Repeat if desired. All right, I'm going to go in there, I'm going to say, all right, repeat is equal to input. Would you like to try again? Right? and then maybe I should tell them what the answer should be, yes or no. Okay, so, and you know, if I forgot my loop, I'm just going to run this thing again, right? Because I forgot my loop, right? I'm making every possible mistake in the world. 8, right? Would you like to try again? Yeah, but it doesn't do it. Okay, so what do I have to do? Where do I add the loop? Huh? Where's the beginning? Here?
No, before the random, or before the num1.
All right, well, let me put it here just so we can see how that goes wrong too, because I got to make every possible error in the world as I'm writing this, right? Okay, so yeah, it should be up here right before I make the random numbers, otherwise it's not going to generate 2 new random numbers, but let's just have a look if I forgot. So I'm just going to say while true here. I'm going to grab this whole thing, move it. Okay, and if my repeat is not equal to yes, I'm going to break the loop. Okay, let's see how that works, or how that doesn't work. Alright, 4 plus 5, I'm going to get it right. Alright, would you like to try again? Yeah. And then it makes the same random numbers again. Why? Because I generated them before the loop. They stay the same, so I got to grab these things here, these two, right, and put that inside of my loop too. Okay, and that's it. So now it should work. All right, 4 plus 5. Now, just to mess with me, it made the same exact freaking numbers as before, I think, but whatever. 9. Okay, do we want to try again? Yeah. 5 plus 6, 7, 6, 10, 11. Do you want to try again? No. Okay, so now that it's completely tested for my addition, you got to go and write the other ones. Okay, but the process is just little baby steps. Test the program often, see where it doesn't work, just adjust it, fix it again, run it again. And then when it's perfect, when this piece is perfect, only then do you want to go and do the rest. A lot of people do the whole thing at once. They're going to write the addition and the subtraction and multiplication all at once, and then the program doesn't work, and guess what? You got to go make the same correction in 3 different places. Don't do that, okay? So again, incremental development, little baby steps. That's how life becomes easier. Okay? Questions? All right, so that's your hint for 22. Pretty much solved the whole thing for you. Okay? Now, let me save it. So when you're doing this, try to not look at the hints. Just try to solve it on your own. Next one is smallest, largest, sum average. These are not even lists yet, right? Right, this time you're going to make X random numbers between 10 to 15. For example, 11, this determines how many times the loops will happen. By the way, I did something like that when I was doing the example. Where did I do that? This piece right here. So I'll say this is your hint for P23. Okay? P23. Hint. Hint P23. Okay? So you know how to make a random number. You make a loop that happens X times, and then inside the loop you make another random number. I think that's what it is. Right? And then make the smallest and largest equal to the first number. If you're doing these things with lists, it's very easy. You use one loop to make the list, right? Then after the list is full with numbers, you go in there and you tell it, okay, min is equal to numList 0, max is equal to numList 0, and then go and compare it to all the other ones in the list. Does that make sense? Want one more hint on that? Or we're good? Anyone want more hints? All right, more hints. All right, so I'm going to move it down there. So this is P23 hints, but then let's do it, revisit it. All right, P23 hints. All right, I should have copied that thing. So it is not, this time it doesn't involve, you know, the one that we're doing for 23 does not involve lists. So we're going to do it without lists. Okay, so no lists. Get rid of the list. Okay. Okay, so this is once. I'm going to show you how many numbers I'm generating. So I'm going to do this. Print generating x random numbers. And I'm going to do it like this. And then end equals quote quote. Okay, and then in here I'm going to show you these numbers. Print random num. And I'm going to show it all on the same line, equals quote quote. Alright, I'm going to keep it simple for now. Alright, so 16. No, should disable that. But there you go, right? 20 random numbers. Here are your 20 random numbers. Okay, and you know, the assignment is asking each of these random numbers is supposed to be 20 to 50. Let's say I'm going to make my random numbers. Each of them is going to be between, I don't know, 50 to 100. Okay? So, now I'm supposed to find the min and the max, right? So, remember the algorithm to find min and max. It goes like this. To find min, let's go with just the min, make a variable min equal to the first number, right? That's your step one. Step two is compare min to all other numbers after the first. And 3, if any other number is smaller than min, make min equal to that number. Alright, so it goes like this. Let's say you have numbers like, I don't know, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, something like that. Right? So initially, and it's a good idea for you to do this for like really small, you know, lists of numbers, right? So you can visualize. So the min initially is just going to be equal to this. Okay? So min is equal to 5 initially, right? And then compare min to, sorry, not 5, 4 initially, right? And then compare min to 5 and 5, 1, 2, and if min is smaller than any of them, or sorry, if any of them is smaller than min is equal to that number. Alright? So it goes like this. It's like, alright, so min is equal to 4 initially, right? So we're going to ask, okay, is min less than, or no, is 5 less than min? No, right? Then the next one is 1 less than min? Yes. So min is equal to 1. And then we go to the next one. Is 2 less than min? No, right? Because min is now 1. We went through all of them. We captured the smallest one. And that's how we're going to do it. So, how do I make min equal to the first number? All right, so let's say I'm going to make the number. And then my question is, how do I make min equal to the first number? How do I know it's the first number?
Check if your index is 0.
All right, so the first number is when I is equal to 0, right? The first time we go through the loop. The first time we go through the loop. Okay, so if my I is equal to 0, min is equal to that first random number. Okay, so that's that. Now the next thing is compare min to all the other numbers after the first. Okay? How do I know it's not the first number? How do I know it's all the other numbers after the first? Same way, right? I look at my index, my I, right? If I is not equal to 0, it's got to be some of these other numbers. So I'm just going to say, all right, else. Right? When is the else going to happen? The else happens automatically for every number after the first, or when I is not equal to 0. Right? So when I is not equal to 0, we have to compare. So I go in there and I do if any of my other random numbers is less than my min, I make min equal to that random number. Okay? And you can add a little comment in there. And again, make sure, get in the habit of writing comments. It might be tedious, but if I'm doing it, you should be doing it. Okay, especially in the beginning when you're doing these things. Don't just like write code and say, well, I don't know what this is doing. Write some explanations, right? Tell yourself what you're doing. And it's going to be a lot clearer than just looking at some, code. All right? So if any number is less than min, make min equal to that number. All right? So nice and neat explanation for everything that you're doing. And then at the end, I can show you print the min or smallest number is min, and hopefully it works. Run it. Great. Let me enter some stuff. No. Okay. Smallest number is 51. Yeah, 51 is the smallest. Okay? Questions? So that's your hint for that. Got to do the rest. The next one is smallest, largest, average with lists. So similar thing. You can pretty much use this the whole thing, but let's just do the 24 hint. All right. So here's how you would do it with 24. P 24 hint. Right? It's pretty much the same thing as the other one on top, right? I'm going to copy this whole thing, except I'm going to go and add a list. Right? So new list is equal to this, right? Make an empty list. Okay, and then after that, I'm going to add all these numbers to the list. New list is equal to, whoops, not equal, append random num. Okay, I can show you the list after that. It's a good idea, but I'm not going to. So this is just one loop. I'm going to use this loop for just filling up the list, right? So a loop to fill up the new list with X numbers, each between 50 to 100. Okay? So now I'm just going to use another loop. It might not be the most efficient thing, but I'll show you how easy it is. All right? So just going to recycle this loop again. Kind of. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say, all right, hold on. Min is equal to my first number. Which one is my first number? New list 0. Right? Makes it easier. You don't have to be like, well, hold on, I have to use the index. No. So now that I have my min here, I go in there and I do start this thing at 1. Right? I can start at 0 again, but why would I compare it to itself? Right? And then I do the business that I did up here. If this, I'll just write it. So if any element, new list I, is less than min, right? If any element on the list is less than min, then min is equal to that element. So you see it's actually a little bit easier with lists. Okay? And you already know how to do the sum and the average. I already showed you some of that stuff, but here, I'll do it again. All right, I'm going to say sum is equal to new list 0, started at 0, right? I mean, make it equal to the first thing. And then in there, I'm just going to go and say, all right, sum plus equals new list I. Okay? And then you know how to do the average and all that good stuff. Okay? Questions? Alrighty. Count letters in a sentence. I already showed you how to do this, but now what the hell, I'll do it again. Right? So let's say you have, do I want to do this? Actually, do you want hints on this or you got it? Anyone want a hint? Alright, I'm getting one. So, alright, this is your P25 hint. Okay? So, you have to do this for a couple of letters. So I'll pretty much solve the whole thing for you. Alright, I'll do a list, right? So, I'll do a string. So let's say a sentence is equal to 1 or hello world, right? That's my sentence, right? Okay, one to look for, I don't know, the letter L. Okay? And the assignment actually asks you to ask the user to enter the letters. So the user is going to enter this. So let's say I'm going to say letter to look for is equal to L, right? The user can enter this. And then I just go through the sentence for I in range from 0 to the length of my sentence, steps of 1. If any of the letters sentence I are equal to the letter to look for, I'm going to count it. So let's say count first is equal to first letter. Let's call it count letter 1 is equal to 0, right? And plus equals 1. Right? So I can go in there at the end and show you print the letter L was found, count letter 1 times. Okay, hopefully it works. Alright, generating random numbers, blah blah blah. The letter L was found 3. Yeah, should have done a new line right here, but whatever. Okay, so yeah, the letter L was found 3 times. There's 1, 2, 3 of them. We're good? Alright, last one. Lockers. That's an interesting problem. Alright. So I guess I'll walk you through it. And I think my solution is off by 1, but whatever. Okay. So this is an example of a little bit more complicated problem. But we're going to approach it the same way we did just like anything else, right? We're going to focus on the small little details, solve those little things, just start putting them together, and then we're going to discover a pattern of how to do things and then solve the whole thing. All right? So the problem is this. You have 1,000 lockers, 1,000 students. All lockers are initially locked. First student opens all the lockers. Second student closes every other locker. Third student opens if it's closed or closes if it's open every third locker. Fourth student does the same thing for every fourth locker, fifth, and sixth, and seventh, all the way to the 1,000 students, right? And the question is, how many lockers, which exact lockers are open when it's all done, and how many are open? Okay, so if you're going to be doing this with, with math, right, it's a little bit complicated. But if you're actually writing a program for this, it is not that complicated at all. Okay, so let's do this from with what we've learned. P26. How would you do this with a math is a math problem. What is this, series?
Yeah,
Okay,
well,
So-
it won't be a sum, but.
yeah, some kind of a series problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you don't know series, don't worry about it. You don't need to. Okay? So here's how we're going to do it with the programming. So, and by the way, I got this. This was an extra credit problem that one of my students, my engineering students at Hartnell, got an extra credit assignment from his differential equations professor, who asked him to do this. And he asked.
Yeah, you could do it with like rates and stuff too.
Yeah, he asked the professor, well, can we write a program? And the professor didn't know better, so he said yes. And then he came over to me and he said, how do you do this? So there you go. That's how this assignment came about. So this is your P26 hint. All right, so let's just follow the clues. Let's follow the description. So you have 1,000 lockers and 1,000 students, right? All lockers are initially locked. So I'm going to make a list. So I'm going to say lockers is equal to an empty list, right? So this is an empty list for all the lockers, right? I know there's going to be 1,000 of them, and they're going to be all lockers are initially locked, right? So let me copy this thing here. Copy, right? Throw that in there. Okay, so all lockers are initially locked, so I'm going to go with 1 is locked, because 1 kind of looks like an L, right? Let's call it lowercase l, right? And 0 is open, right? 0 looks like an O, 1 looks like an L. Easy enough. I can go and add L and O if I want to, but let's just go with these two numbers. Okay, so I fill up, first what I have to do is fill up the list with 1,000 ones. So how do I do that? For I in range from 0 to 1,000, steps of 1, I'm going to say lockers, make it lockers, dot append 1. Alright? Is it going to be 1,000 lockers? I don't know. Let's find out. I'm going to do print lockers, show you all of them, and I'm going to show you print len of lockers, just to convince you that it's really 1,000 of them, because we're not going to go and count all of them, unless you want to. It will take us like a couple of minutes. Alright, I got to turn this piece of code too, because I'm getting tired of entering. No. Alright, whoops, there you go. It's a list of 1,000 things, hopefully. Alright, and if you don't want to count if it's 1,000 things, you go in there and you use the length. Yeah, it's 1,000. Okay? Alright. So let me go turn off that piece of code. It keeps asking me to enter things because I'm getting tired of this. Now is this. There you go. I don't have to enter things again, ever. Okay, so fill up the list with 1,000 ones. All right, great. Now, next one is first student opens all my lockers. So I'm going to go in there. I'm going to add my little comment so I know what I'm doing. First student opens all the lockers. What do?
Sorry, I interrupted.
Mm-hmm.
The dot append parenthesis 1, that means add 1 item?
Add 1 to the end of the lockers list.
If I 2 or just put 2 there?
If you want to add 2s, yeah. If you do this 2, then it will be, this whole thing is going to be filled up with 2s, right? So we decided that 1 is going to be locked, so we're staying with that. That's the reason. Okay. Add 1 to the end of the lockers list 1,000 times. All right. And then again, the little comment is very important. 1 is locked and 0 is open. Okay, so we created 1,000 lockers. They're all locked. All right. Next thing is first student opens all my lockers. So what do I do? Huh? Just change it to 0. All right. So I'm just gonna grab this thing here. And how do I change it to 0? Same thing. All right, you're telling me same thing, huh? So if I do this, you're telling me to add zeros?
No, because then you're just
Then I'm
adding
going to make
0 to
2,000
1.
lockers. So That's not gonna work, so what do I do?
Lockers,
Lockers I
change it to 0.
is equal to 0, right? So open all the lockers. Change every locker from 1, which is locked, to 0, which is open. Yes? Easy enough? You're not convinced? Let's have a look at the lockers. And in the beginning, it's a good idea to show them to yourself. And then after a while, it'll just get confusing. But for now, we can see it. All right. 1,000 lockers. First there were ones. Now there's zeros. Okay, and I haven't added any extra ones. But if you want to confirm that, you just do print alien lockers. Okay. Now let's do this for the second student. Second student closes every other locker.
Did you start on the first locker or the second locker?
I'm always starting at the first locker. Okay? So second student closes every other locker. What do I do now?
If it's already closed.
How can I make it go through every other locker?
Do the same thing except change the 1 to 2.
Okay, that's exactly it. Get this, change this to 2, and then I have to lock them. All right, so now I'm going to add them, throw that to 1. So change every other locker from open to locked. All right, easy enough. And if you can go in there and have a look at it, you're going to see still that it's still going to be easy on the eyes, so you can see what it's doing. I'm going to turn off these other ones though. Turn off this, and just in case, let's see if it's really 1,000 still. So now we should see alternating zeros. Zeros and ones, zeros and ones. Like that. Okay? So it's still relatively easy to keep track of, right? So first we started as all locked, then we opened them all. Now they're all alternating zeros and ones. Okay. And then at this point after that, I'm not even going to bother showing them because it's just going to get confusing. I can't keep track of what's what anymore. Okay? But that's what the computer's for. So, all right, now we're going to go to the third student. Third student. And again, I'm putting comments every step of the way so I know what I'm doing. Okay, so third student opens if it's closed or closes if it's open every third locker. So what do? How do I change my loop? Start with the loop. What's that? Change this to 3. All right, so that's every third locker. Okay, now how do I do the open if closed or closed if open? How do I do that?
What the value of the locker is.
So if my locker is, let's say, closed, right? If locker is closed, I'm going to open it. So lockers I is equal to, and I forgot double equal, right? I'm going to make this thing equal to 0, right? Open it. Then how do I do the other one? Another if. If lockers I is equal to 0,
I guess you could just do an else.
well, let's go with this for a second so we can realize what's wrong. Okay, so if it's locked or if it's open, if locker is open, lock it. Okay? Why is this a problem? What I wrote.
Oh, because then you're going to flip it back.
You didn't change anything. You went from 1 to 0 and then back to 1.
Exactly. So let's say you find a locker that's locked, right? Then you're going to go in there and you're going to open it. And then the next thing right after that, it's going to be like, oh, hold on, this thing is open. Then it's going to lock it again. So it undoes its own job every time. So what do? Elif, right? I only do one of them, right? If I lock it, I'm not going to open it. Or if I open it, I'm not going to lock it, basically. Okay? All right, so that's the third student. Okay, and guess what we're going to have to do for the fourth student? Let me get
Couldn't you
question.
just do else in, like, not even.
You could do an else, yeah.
because-
Yeah, but let's just leave it like that, just because it kind of makes sense. Right? All right, so now we're going to do the for student. Okay, and you tell me what do I need to change for the for student.
Just the 3 to-
Change the 3 to 4, right? All right, let's do the fifth student. And don't worry, I'm not going to do it 1,995 more times. Right, that's the fifth student. What do I need to change? 4 to 5. All right, so next one is, right, I need to do this. Need to do this another 995 more times, right? I'm not going to copy paste this thing 995 times. Too much work. What if I have 1,000,000 lockers? Okay, even more work. So what am I going to do is let me write the thing for the 1,000 student. So I'm going to go, I did the third, the fourth, the fifth. You can see it's basically the same thing, just one little thing changing. Let's do the 1,000th. This is the 1,000 student. What do I need to change? What's that?
5 to 1,000.
I'm changing the 5 to 1,000. Okay? So, why did I do this a bunch of times? So that I can see the pattern. Okay? The pattern is, I'm going to have something, this piece here. Alright, this is my pattern to see the pattern. Right? Now I'm going to close it right at the end. This. Right? So what if I just went in there and I'm going to call this thing here the 3. I'm going to make it a variable. Right? I'm going to call this variable j. Okay? And I'm going to go down here. I'm going to go to this one here. That's also j. Right? That's also j. Whoops. And so is this one. Okay? So what is the value of j initially? What is the first value of j? J is equal to what? 3, right? What's the last value of j? 1,000. Okay, well, how about I do this? I'm gonna grab this thing here. Right? I'm gonna throw it right here on top. Okay, I'm gonna change this to j. And I'm gonna make another loop that goes for j in range. And you help me with this. Where does the j start? 3. That's why we wrote the patterns, right? So I can easily see what it starts. So it starts, right? J starts at 3, right? And j ends at 1,000, right? So I start this thing at 3. I ended at what value? 1,000. So is this good? Is this going to go to 1,000? No. Where does it go to? 999. I want to go to 1,000. And that's why I wrote the pattern, so I can see it. In fact, if you look at my solution, I messed this part up. Okay? Right? So if I leave this as 1,000, you're going to get the answer that I showed you, which is wrong. Right? So we're going to change this to 1,001. Right? So it goes all the way to 1,000. I'm going to grab this thing here, indent it. That's it. Now I opened and locked all of them. And you know how to count through things, right? You already know how to go through a list and count how many times a certain element appears in there. You should be able to do that. So that's the hard part. And it's hard because you have to do a nested loop, and this is probably like the first time you have to do a nested loop, maybe the second. But if you see what I did, it's basically baby steps, baby steps, baby steps, baby steps, and then gradually I say, oh, hold on. I'm not going to copy paste this thing 995 more times. I can see the pattern. What's the first ones? Okay, great. What's the last one? It's this. And then based on this, you write yourself a loop that goes from 3 to 1,000 and then changes the variable j. And that's it. Okay? So this is a loop that repeats the open lock loop for students 3 through 1000. Okay? Questions? So this might be probably the most difficult problem you've encountered already in this class, but that's why I walked you through it. All right, so that's all you have to do for this week. I'm gonna upload the notes, upload the video, and you should be able to do it easy. Right? Any questions? We're good? All right. There's only like, I don't know how many more days are left in a semester. 17, something like that. So keep up, or you know the name of the game. It's your grade. But don't procrastinate. There's only like what, 2 weeks and a half left. Get on top of things. Ask me questions if you need to. I'm here from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. Tuesdays and Thursdays. So you're welcome to come and kick back and ask me questions and work on the assignments. I'm also in Morgan Hill from 6 to 8 after this, right? So come there also if you like. And that's all I have. We're good? Okay. So I am going to unplug this here and pause the video.